Hello, everybody. Welcome back. So this is a happy event because we're going to watch What's Up, Doc in a few minutes. But it's also a bit of a sad event because we're commemorating a filmmaker. He was a filmmaker, he was a critic, he was a historian, he was a great writer about film. We're commemorating the loss of a guy who really represented a bridge that we'll never again have between old Hollywood and the new Hollywood of the 70s. This was a guy who not only respected all of the people that had come before him, but really stole, and I mean that in the best sense of the word, a lot of their good tricks. And you'll see him stealing a lot from, not only from Howard Hawks, of course, but Chuck Jones and other people in this movie. And it's absolutely the right move. You steal all those really good tricks, you use them again. These old comedy bits still work, and boy, does it work in this movie. But the man I'm talking about is Peter Bogdanovich, and our artistic director, Richard Linklater, AFS's artistic director, Richard Linklater, and I had been sending emails back and forth trying to figure out how we could commemorate the loss of Peter Bogdanovich a few months ago. And finally, Rick has some free time, so we're able to put together a little series of some of Bogdanovich's films. And this is not the normal series that anybody else would do of Peter Bogdanovich's films, where you do the three big hits that he had in a row, which were Last Picture Show, Paper Moon, or this one, and then Paper Moon. No, this is a big hit, What's Up, Doc, followed by one of his biggest flops, At Long Last Love, followed by a movie that was ignored called Nickelodeon. But this is a great three-film series of Bogdanovich. And here to introduce it, and also after the film, to join us on stage for our discussion in the round, which I hope you can all hang around for and participate in, is our artistic director and a friend of the late Peter Bogdanovich, Richard Linklater. Come on up.
Oh, thanks, Lars. Wow. It doesn't get much better than this. We're going to be watching a 35mm print of What's Up, Doc. I give it up to Lars, finding a print. This is film heaven. Peter would be so moved for all of us here tonight. Lars set it up pretty good there. You know, like a lot of people are asking me, why are you showing those three films? We get one from that. I think Peter is such a fascinating career, and everyone has opinions about it, but I have a bit of an agenda here, because my theory about Peter is he was just incredibly consistent. Incredibly. He did his next film always. It's the culture and the people around and his life circumstance. Everything changed. But my theory is he's just wildly consistent. What's inconsistent is the world around him. So that's what we'll explore in these three films. But you know, Peter passed away unexpectedly. He was very busy. He had a lot of projects. I was actually doing a thing with him, but we'll talk about that after. At age 82, this January 6th. He passed away unexpectedly watching something on January 6th. What was everybody watching on January 6th? Well, Peter wasn't watching that. He was watching, from 1934, I think, Ernst Lubitsch, The Merry Widow. Peter never did get very far out of the 30s. And I find that poetic and moving, you know, that he would die watching The Merry Widow. I don't know why. I have little insider stuff to share like that. But like I said, he has a very perceived up and down career, but we're gonna prove otherwise. You know, Peter to me was like the consummate director. He really was. He was blessed he grew up in New York. At age 12, he started going to hundreds of movies. He had access to all the culture there. He was a gifted actor. He studied with Stella Adler. He, as a young person, like 20-year-old, he was writing, early 20s, he's programming films at the MoMA. He's writing monographs of Hitchcock and Wells. Just a film freak that puts everyone else to shame completely. And so I think around 1966, he's about, 26 years old at this point, and has made a name for himself as a journalist, as a, programmer and all that. But he heads out to Hollywood with his wife and partner, Polly Platt, and he does what the directors of that era did. You didn't stay where you were and make your indie film. You had to go to Hollywood. You had to hopefully get on with, Roger Corman or something, get your foot in the industry, make a film, do whatever you had to do. So he meets Corman at a screening. Corman had read something that he had written in Esquire, I believe. They strike up a conversation, and Corman says, "Hey, you should come work on this thing." And Peter says he went from like carrying the laundry to directing in 3 weeks on a film. It was a second unit for one of Corman's films, and so that happened for him so fast. And then his first feature, we talk about those 3 films, Picture Show, What's Up, Doc, Paper Moon, but before that is, if you haven't seen it, Targets, that's his Corman exploitation film, came out in '68, but that was classic, how you get your foot in Hollywood. I just think he did one of the best first films of that era. We have better first films now, I think, because people just make their indie film, they make their films, but that was really not the Scorsese's and Coppola's, all them, their goal was to go get your foot in and get in a position and then make your own films. It just wasn't on anyone's mind that you could make your own film. But Bogdanovich takes this Corman, Boris Karloff, how Corman works. He's like, oh, Karloff owes me 2 days, and I got this set, and I've got this footage from this movie we did, and Peter just goes, okay, I can make a movie of that. And he makes it really about old cinema. He makes it, Karloff's an aging horror film star, but the modern world is much more horrible than can he scare people now, because people are going up on towers and shooting people. It's actually one of the best Charles Whitman, for the locals, one of the best Charles Whitman inspired movies. But Targets is a great first film. So if you haven't seen that, I just think you'll like it. It's cinema loving, very well done film. So, and then he goes on this role that's really unprecedented in film history, I think. His first 3 films of studio level are those 3 films, and they have one thing in common. They were super critically acclaimed and super successful, huge hits, huge acclaim, everything you could ever have. He's the new Orson Welles, who's his, buddy at this point. Parallel to that, when he arrived in Hollywood, he famously went around and interviewed, he didn't go to film school, but his film school was actually going around and interviewing all the old Hollywood directors from, that era. They were all pretty much out to pasture at that point. They were all alive, but not working much. And Peter just would call them up and go talk to them, and he did interviews. There's a book called The Devil Who Made It that came out in the early 90s that is printed versions of all those interviews, but he got to know old Hollywood, and Peter had this kind of forward quality about him. I'd be horrified to go just start calling up Alfred Hitchcock and people like that, but he didn't. He was like, hey, he's successful writer, successful, I don't know, bomb me up. Peter had this kind of princely quality to him, and he just assumed you'd want to talk to him, and everybody did. He really got to know everybody, and I've listened to some of these tapes. One of the projects, we'll talk about it after, Peter was doing a podcast of all those recordings. So you listen to Peter interviewing Hitchcock or Howard Hawks, or, and if you listen to his questions, he's really doing it as a student. He's asking him, now, why did you cut to the close-up there? He's really a director figuring out film directing. He's directed theater in New York. He's so great with actors. He's, like I said, he's a consummate director, but and he loves movies, but he's really focusing in on shot by shot and making a movie. And all his questions are really fascinating from that angle. You hear him and you can feel his inquisitiveness, and you can feel a director just ready to jump out of the gate. So he had that in his past. He knew everybody. He had this great start to that career. We'll get into it next week, but I really want you all to come back for At Long Last Love. I have a confession to make. I had known Peter since, for almost 30 years. He was always really nice to me and everybody else. He loved filmmakers, and he would invite you over and you'd talk, and you might say a film you like, but the conversation always shifted back to old Hollywood. It's always like, let's talk about old, he would acknowledge everything. Oh yeah, that's great, or that's good. But he would always shift it back to, his love of cinema was so thorough and so rich, so deep. so old. You know, that was his heart and soul was there. But come to the next two films too, because I even as friends, I'd never seen At Long Last Love. All I heard was, oh yeah, that one's not very good, you know, all that. So I was like, oh, maybe that's the one you don't talk about. But after he passed away, I watched it and I was like, oh, it's magnificent. Have we really? The cultural perception was, I think, is so off with him. I feel it was just one of the weird misalignments of time and place. I mean, Peter was always out of time. I think there was this window where the zeitgeist was with him. As you'll see, this movie's a wonderful throwback to 35, it's 72 here, so like, let's say 35 years earlier, Bringing Up Baby, these kind of screwball comedies from that era, not to mention Looney Tunes, you know, from the 40s and 50s. But, you know, he's making old movies. Last Picture Show's old, Paper Moon, the one after this, obviously. But that was kind of cool there for a second. It was really fresh. It was wonderful. And he just kept doing that heroically, in my opinion. You know, he's turning down Hollywood hits, and he never chased the zeitgeist. He just passed through, and the zeitgeist caught him for a while. But he just kept doing it. And so I really admire him so much. And so we're going to really have fun. Okay, I need one thing. I'm just thinking of the end of this film, or toward the end, not to give away. I mean, this movie's, how many of you have never seen What's Up, Doc? Let's say, oh my God, we are so, man, how many, I'm so excited for you guys. How many of you have ever heard of someone named Barbra Streisand? No, kidding. Well, for a young man going through puberty around this time, let me tell you about Barbra Streisand. She is so fantastic in this movie. This movie is, I don't know, perfect maybe? Everything about it. The cast, the pacing, the comedy, the momentum, it's just a perfect comedy. It builds, it crescendos at the end. It's not that long a movie. I think it's like 90 minutes. It builds Ryan O'Neal, two of the biggest stars of the 70s. And then the great Madeline Kahn is so brilliant in this movie. She's so genius. And this is her first movie playing Eunice. The fiance that Barbara comes in is just going to just destroy everything. So I think it's pretty well acknowledged that Barbara is Bugs Bunny in this movie. And I don't know if that makes Ryan O'Neal Elmer Fudd, but some version of that. But it's the classic, you know, setup. He's the nerdy kind of scientific guy, not a paleontologist like in Bringing Up Baby, but let's say a musicologist. And there's 4 travel bags at the hotel get switched up. I won't get into the plots. Just it's farcical, and it just goes, and you just go with it. It's a consummately, perfectly crafted film. And but how many of you have seen Love Story? Okay, so everybody in Love Story. Let's tell all the people who haven't seen Love Story. There's a tagline. It was so annoying. It was on the poster. It was in the culture forever. You couldn't get away from it for about 10 years. What's the tagline to that movie? Love means never having to say you're sorry. Yeah, never having to say you're sorry. I just sprinkle that out there. That was Ryan O'Neal's huge hit film, Love Story. That made him a huge star. And so we're sort of riffing on that in this movie a little bit. And I don't know what else to say. This is going to be fun. And Lars and I will get up here after, talk about it, tell some stories, and see how you guys like it. So, okay. Thanks for being here. And what's up, Doc? Let's go. Thank you, Peter. Damn, that it just gets better and better. I don't know.
It's hard to really overstate what a huge sensation that movie was.
Yeah.
Number 1 movie in the box office that year, The Godfather, right? Yeah. Number 2, Poseidon Adventure. That was number 3. Everybody saw that movie.
I saw it.
Yeah.
As a kid. Everybody saw it.
Yeah. Nixon, this was the time when like Nixon loved this movie, you know? Literally. No, yeah.
There's an endorsement for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, a phenomenon, a cultural phenomenon, and throwback movie, you know?
Yeah.
The country was ready for this. But it's so modern, too. Does that feel 50 years old? Not really.
It's so well edited,
I would
too.
say it's closer in age to now, 50 years, than it was then to its
What feels modern about it to you?
I don't know. Such a great San Francisco movie too, isn't it? Well, you know what it feels? It feels timeless. I won't say modern or old-fashioned. It just feels like it's all still funny.
There's no gags that
It's not much
don't
that isn't
work still.
dated. Yeah, it's really. I mean, the relationships, the humor, the speed. I don't know. It's just consummate. I don't know. I just think it's like cinematic comedy perfection.
It certainly worked in this room. Like, you guys were.
Yeah.
That's a great to watch a really good comedy in a room with a bunch of people who are laughing.
Yeah.
What a feeling! It's incredible.
God, it's just, I don't know, just perfection. I kind of know Austin Pendleton a little bit from New York theater.
Yeah.
He played Frederick Larrabee, the philanthropist. And I once asked him about this. What was it like? What's up, dog? He says, faster. So Bogdanovich was just faster. Say the lines faster, do everything faster. That was his whip, faster. So you can say that faster. And so every time you see Barbra Streisand just on a roll, I just imagine him going, Barbara, you can do that a little, So that's just the speed of this movie. I don't know.
When you look at the credit, you realize it doesn't just say directed by Peter Bogdanovich. It's produced and directed by Peter Bogdanovich.
Yeah.
This looks like a really high grade, difficult movie to produce.
So complex.
Yeah.
So tricky. God, you just like, oh my God. Yeah, it's so sophisticated. Not just the subject matter and the banter and the everything, just the way it's shot, the timing. It's got to be perfect to work. The doors opening, just the perfection. I don't know. I just keep coming back to perfection.
Yeah. Verna Fields.
Sublime. Yeah, just perfectly edited.
Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah.
Just what a great team. Polly Platt.
Yep.
Even though I guess they were breaking up about now, famously.
Yeah, it must have been because
Peter, yeah.
Last Picture Show.
They were shooting this before Picture Show had come out.
Okay.
How about that? So he hadn't had that success. This was kind of, they went into it rather quickly. He had finished Picture Show, and this was apparently the studio had asked him hey, Barbra Streisand really wants to work with you. And he kind of threw out the idea, well, we need, some kind of old screwball. It's like, okay, how soon can we start in September? How quick can we get going? So it all happened pretty fast. Apparently it was Polly's idea to do San Francisco. So this was, I don't know, it's interesting. I'm thinking about next week's film. I think he goes which is, if you want to see Madeline Kahn again, she's back with Sybil Shepherd in one of her best performances. I promise you. I'm not kidding. She sings and dances, and it's great. But he kind of goes all the way. Instead of like an old formula in the modern world, he goes all the way with it. It's a period film set in the 30s. He just kind of goes all the way, 30s musical. But it has the same, I would almost say the same tone, the same light on its feet, quickness and banter, I don't know, wit. And it's really one of the best pairings. If you notice in the elevator, there's always Cole Porter songs going. The opening song's obviously Cole Porter. Well, next week's film is the complete marriage of Bogdanovich and Cole Porter. It's all Cole Porter songs. And I think Bogdanovich is the Cole Porter of cinema, that's high praise. He's just kind of above it. He just kind of floats on air, like this and all his films, he just had a very romantic.
Yeah.
There's someone for everyone. There's bad things happen, but it all ends up well. And I just think that's how Peter saw the world, which is for a guy who tragedy sort of stalked him in his life. It was around. He had every reason to be. I don't know what He didn't have cynicism. He didn't have a lot of those qualities.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't really of his time. He wasn't cynical, 70s, dark. He never was, So I just think he has this really unique quality that he carried through all his decades of filmmaking. And if you want to see his last feature, I don't think this got seen widely, but She's Funny That Way in 2014. It didn't get wide distribution, but it's Owen Wilson, Imogen Poots. It's a wonderful movie. Screwball. It's kind of a good double feature with this. It's a lot of mistaken identity. It's that, and it's a perfect double feature with this. It's New York, but a lot of the same people too. It's a lot of coincidence, a lot of, you know, crisscross couples and things like that. But it's a nice, you know, 45-year sequel to this in a certain way. So if you get a chance, check it out. It's worth seeing. You know, you got to see it like, oh wow, still in the game. You know, much older, all these years later, but it's pretty good. Owen Wilson's fantastic in it. It was just one of those films that I don't think, you know, for some reason, you know, people never gave Peter a break after a certain point, and it's just a fact, you know. And we'll talk about it more next week, I think. But I think that one deserves a look, as does next week's film. But that's my point with these films. And the one 2 weeks from now, Nickelodeon, it's a lot like this. You know, it has this kind of screwball, but the subject matter is movies, early movies, like early movies, like Nickelodeon, like they're just figuring out how to make these things.
Teens, yeah.
Yeah, the teens.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when they're just making shorts and anyone can make a movie, it's just the wide open territory of early cinema. And that movie comes out of all those interviews. He's interviewing guys who had shot silent films, all these old guys who were around then, all these crazy stories. So it has the same kind of screwball, a lot of visual gags. He said it's such a gift for that, but it's a lot of like Harold Lloyd and Chaplin. It's all the silent comedians. The whole movie, you know, it's the foot in the bucket. You know, you jump over the fence. It's all the stuff you like about this, but the context is all cinema. It's a very cinema literate, funny homage, you know, but to film. It's very cinema loving. So I like Nickelodeon, and yet I think by the time that came out, they were really sick of him and sick of these movies.
He was able to do it the way he wanted
That's
to
what
do it.
I think is kind of triumphant of his life.
And we are going to show the director's cut of Nickelodeon, which is, I don't know if that's ever been screened in Texas before at all. Probably not, yeah. So that's he wasn't at that point able to do what he wanted to do. We should talk a little bit, I think, before we get some audience questions about kind of what was happening with Bogdanovich, the celebrity director, because at this point he made 2 huge films and he was about to make a third, and he was he was one of those few directors, like now, you know, there's like Tarantino and Scorsese, a few directors who are household names. He became a household name director.
At such a young age. You wouldn't really wish this on anyone, but he just kind of went with it. You know, he was hosting the Tonight Show. He was the guest host. Because I think like he had this quality, this kind of princely quality. I mean, he was good looking. He was brilliant. He was very charming. And it just, I think Peter, that lack of cynicism, I don't think he was now dating young, beautiful Sybil Shepherd. I don't think he doesn't have dark thoughts or about other people. So he was naive to think no one would have dark thoughts about him. But like, oh man, everybody hates you now. You're really famous and you're really successful. And it felt like he was like rubbing it in people's face, but he wasn't. He was just kind of living a life that he thought maybe, you know, Orson Welles is on TV all the time, you know, but that's all he is at that point, you know. I don't know. I don't know who his role models were, but he just kind of went with it. But he, you know, I don't know. There was a little bit of him performer, you know. Peter was a good actor. One of the better actor directors. That film I talked about, Targets, he's in that as a young guy. He plays the director in it. As you all know, he was great. And, you know, Sopranos, I mean, he had a lot of performances in his life. So he was a very good actor. I think he liked, you know, performing. Most directors are kind of, you know, weirdos who don't grab, you know, that kind of spotlight. But for him, maybe it was his acting background, something. He didn't mind it. It felt natural to him. But I don't, you know, I know it looked arrogant, and he came off that way, but it shouldn't matter. You know, it shouldn't matter. The films are the films, but it did matter.
Yeah, he said there's a famous thing that, by the way, you should read all of Peter Bogdanovich's books. They're all really good. But there was a famous thing that Orson Welles had said because he had said to Orson Welles, he was like, why is everybody giving me such a hard time? I thought people loved People in Love, because he and Sybil were going around, and Orson Welles said, don't fool yourself. They hate you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, he had this kind of beautiful, naive, you know, but he was a romantic all the way. It shows, it's in the films. It's, you know, he was. Yeah, I think maybe he was a little too close. I don't know if it's good to be that, like, his relationship with Wells was kind of fraught, you know, that, I don't know.
Maybe Wells was sleeping in his guest house for something like 9 years, I think.
I don't know, for a while, yeah. But yeah, they had their own I don't know. I don't know. He was.
Well,
He was
I want to hear from all of you, but I especially want to hear from some of the people that were watching this for the first time, because I just kind of want to like hear how it hit, how it worked for you. But at this point, we'll take any question or contribution from the audience. So whatever anybody has to say.
observations
See a
or-
hand right over here. Yeah.
Yeah, they were quite a team through this era for sure. I mean, everybody that was a great Karina. All of us like you must remember this, right? One of the great film podcasts, Karina Longworth, who's been here before. Yeah, that was wonderful. Long, yeah, what was that, like 10 parts or something? It was long. You know, at the same time, Peter had his own podcast, The Plot Thickens. I remember listening to those back to back, and it was just overwhelming. You know, that was really about his life and in all these films. So those things really reflect and support each other. But to listen to those two together, was that last summer or 2 summers ago? Yeah, I thought that was cool. You know, and Peter loved. He really got into podcasts. I hinted at this in the intro, but he was like, "Oh, it's like radio. It's like old school." He just started to really like podcasts, and he was doing a podcast at the time of his death. It was all those interviews I talked about. He was getting directors. He just kind of said, "Okay, pick a director." You know, he had a list of directors, and we're going to listen to the original interviews he did in the 60s and then talk about that filmmaker and his influence on you. And it just, I don't know, I was really looking forward to it. I had picked Edgar Ulmer from, I named my little production company after Detour, his film. So I said, I got to do Ulmer. And he was so excited about it. I mean, just, it was so fun to talk to him just about film. And he was so funny and just full of life. It was really shocking. We were supposed to do it in December, and I was busy. I was kind of shooting something briefly, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, I can't do it this week. Oh, wait, we'll just get it early next year." And then I was working. It's like, "Oh, Peter," I was like, "What?" We were about to do this podcast together. So he was still really sharp, really with it, very excited about, you know, putting out this series of. He just never, ever lost the thread, you know, of old Hollywood and his last film, the one I just described. She's funny that way. That was the last feature. His last documentary was his wonderful film, The Great Buster, on Buster Keaton. So he did a number of documentaries, but that's a wonderful, wonderful film. And I know for him to go out with Buster Keaton. But he had another film he was he had co-written, I think, with Louise Stratton, who they did She's Funny That Way together, and he was trying to raise money for it, and he was, you know, I had hooked him up, like he had a part for Jack Black. I kind of hooked him up with Jack Black, who had agreed to do it. He wanted to work with him. So I don't know. He was still kind of in the game in his own way. He wasn't retired. He wasn't doing anything. I found that kind of moving, you know.
He does the whole pitch for what that last film would have been on the Gilbert Gottfried podcast, and he's gone too. But on that podcast, he did that podcast.
Yeah.
He does the whole pitch for what that movie would be, and it sounds like it would have been pretty thrilling.
Yeah. I didn't hear. Oh, the Gilbert. I never heard that one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Tune in.
I'll listen to it now because I don't really know that much about that film. I just knew they were in the works on it. So, well, what else about this?
Let's see if anybody in the audience. I see a hand right over here.
Absolutely. Yeah, like the Cat's Meow from early 2000s. That's, once again, we're back in old Hollywood. And even then, his films, like They All Laughed, or they still have that same quality, his same kind of romanticism, screwball. I don't know. It was just his gear. I don't, I think he's just remarkably consistent. Even in that thing, what was it called? The Thing Called Love. You ever see that with Sandy Bullock? One of River Phoenix's last film. I want to say 93. They're at an old drive-in. They're always showing an old movie. He just can't get too far, from it. No matter what story he's telling, it always seems to be this homage to old storytelling and old cinema. It's just, he has so much love and respect, I think. And he was kind of, like I keep saying, he's kind of a guy out of time. I think there's other artists like that, kind of wonderfully. They don't feel like they're that influenced by what's going on right now. He wasn't ever chasing anything. He was just trying to tell stories the way he liked and what he wanted to do. He wasn't chasing the zeitgeist or trying to be cool. He just, for a while, he definitely was,
And he was keeping up with the old guys. He was on the phone with Howard Hawks, like when he was making this movie. And I know Howard Hawks, when he would travel around the world, Hawks said that, they're playing our movie down here in Venezuela. And he sent him a photo from What's Up Doc calling it our movie.
They're playing our movie.
Yeah.
He's right. How great is Ryan O'Neal in this movie? That's so hard to pull off, that kind of straight man. Because, Ryan O'Neal, he's a super masculine, like, cool guy. I mean, he's a big, to play the dweeby dork, and so just, I don't know, he's so great. The cast is just so perfect. Everybody.
And all those,
Kenneth Mars.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Oh
Kenneth
my
Mars with
God.
the hair flip. Yeah.
Everything. Just every little bit. And then, every little supporting character, the extras in the background who are getting kind of screwed over by this havoc, they always have a little punchline, a little gesture or some kind of thing. It's just kind of
That's
perfect.
very much like Preston Sturges, who would do that a lot. Would have just the most incredible faces in his back. In the
Always.
background.
What mugs this movie has.
Yeah.
Everyone, just those looks and it's just so perfectly cast. But I think, it's a tradition, Lady Eve, things like that. But yeah, it's Sturges, it's Hawks, it's
And I would say that if you're a filmmaker, if you're a young or an old, any kind of filmmaker, like a lot of those people that were making those movies that you were loving, they're still around. And maybe, Rick's pretty busy, but like there's a lot of these filmmakers that aren't that busy. I mean, you make a lot of stuff, you know what I mean? But like there's, I'm not going to name names, but there's filmmakers of even that American indie generation who are not regularly working, and you can reach out to them and they would love to hear from you perhaps. If they wouldn't, they'll let you know.
Run them by me first. I know a lot of these people. No, no kidding.
I mean, you know what I'm talking about. Like, there's people out there that have that expertise. They would actually probably like to hear from somebody who loved their 1991 film.
It was sad. It's a different era, but that studio, the people who had come through the studio, it really was. That studio had ended right around the time Peter shows up in Hollywood. Yeah. The studio's over. What do you know? Over. That Hollywood is gone. Those guys, I mean, they're forgotten, but they're not gone. They're all around.
Yeah.
Some great directors. And I always think Peter would have, if he could have like switched eras with like Orson Welles, that would be perfect. Peter could do a film a year at MGM, from the 30s, 40s into the 50s, into the 60s, that 30-year careers a lot of people had. And I think he would have done really well in the system. And instead of floating on his own, kind of, you make a few flops and you're just kind of out. And it's tough. And, you don't have a studio kind of that has your back and just keeps you working if you're really skilled, the way all those other guys, not all their films were, but successes, they don't even think they thought that way. They were just churning out so many movies. I think he would have fit into that just beautifully.
Yeah.
And Wells is kind of the opposite. He would have done much better, I think, in the more official indie world of the 80s, like later era where you're kind of on your own. Like, he never fit into the studio system, and that was his great, loss, and the film world's loss, that he never could fit in and make more movies and that. So I don't know. I just throw that out there. It's just different eras, different personalities that can and can't fit into certain eras. It's always difficult, but
Yeah, imagine what like a Bogdanovich like submarine movie would have been
Yeah.
like. You know, it's like he could have had opportunities to
It
make
would have
yeah
been,
a lot of
probably
different
pretty fun.
genres.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
He would have made it fun.
I'd love to see a Bogdanovich submarine movie. You'd call me
Yeah.
crazy. I don't know. I see a hand right over here. Yeah.
Curious what your thoughts on Peter Bogdanovich kind of helping his friend Orson Welles finish his last film on the other side of the
This other side of the way.
Other side, yeah, that was Peter who acts in that movie. You know, Other Side of the Wind came out a few years ago. Netflix finished it. Peter was one of the producers, as was who else was? I don't know. There were some people really helping that along.
Did you like it?
Yeah. Not really, not that much. No, I'd seen parts of it. You know, Oya Kodar, Wells's widow. I saw some of it in Hawaii. Only a couple years after Wells died, she showed like 30. I was at a film festival in Hawaii, just selling coffee. A friend of mine was there, but she showed up and just showed. This is in '87, so Wells had only passed away 2 years before. But I think they were trying to raise money then to finish it, and they showed this footage from it. It was just kind of incredible, but kind of crazy. I didn't know how it worked. There's young Peter Bogdanovich, there's young John Huston, and I don't know. It's not really an Orson Welles movie if he didn't edit it. It's interesting, but I don't know. Is it good? You like it?
I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah? Love it?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
I don't think I totally understood it. I like
am
what
I
I liked
fired?
about it.
Am I fired? I don't know.
I feel that way about other Wells movies. I mean, I like what I like. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm so on the Wells train. I mean,
Good. I am generally. I just don't think. I don't know.
oh, we'll move on. We'll move on.
I'm glad they finished it. Put it like that. I'm just glad they put a button on it. Because
Yeah.
what's worse than these unfinished films and there's footage and cans and storage? I mean, that sucks. So I'm glad they at least did, something along the lines of what he was going for. But who knows, But Peter carried the torch for Orson forever, And I did a film about Orson earlier, from set in '37, me and Orson Welles, and I remember I saw Peter in L.A. and I said, "Hey, I want your blessing." I don't know why I had to ask his blessing. I'm going to do Orson like as if he was his son or something. But and I didn't hear from him for a long time. After that movie, I was like, "Oh, I don't think Peter liked it." And then finally, years later, I just hadn't seen him in a long time. But then he told me he liked it, so I don't know.
Kept you in suspense.
I felt a little, he definitely
Yeah,
kept
yeah.
me in suspense. I thought, I wonder if Peter likes this movie. But that was kind of funny.
Let's see. Have we got any other contributions? I see a hand right back here.
Y'all talked about his connection with Sturges and Hawks, and earlier you mentioned that he was watching a Lubitsch movie when he passed away. I feel like he's one of the only directors, maybe besides Billy Wilder, who could kind of come close to having like the Lubitsch touch. Like, what do y'all think?
Yeah. I think he had the Lubitsch touch, I think and I don't think even Wilder had the Lubitsch touch the way Bogdanovich did. I mean, I think he would like to. He was just different, different attitude toward the world. And good, we're better for it. I mean, so many great movies, but I just think Bogdanovich kind of had a certain feel that was probably inherently a little closer to Lubitsch.
To sort of define the Lubitsch touch for anybody who doesn't sort of know that, the great Austrian or German director Ernst Lubitsch had a particular way of telling a story that was so subtle, really allowed the audience to kind of put the pieces together themselves and make the gags work themselves. He would provide you with the raw materials and you build it yourself inside your head. And then he also would often have things that were sort of a little bit more risque that he would be able to put over with such subtlety.
Yeah, a lot
so
of
that was kind of his
innuendo,
touch.
a lot of, just a deft touch.
And this is certainly not a risque movie, but I was a little surprised to find out this was rated G. It's like there's nothing in it that would keep it from being rated G when you think about it, but it is a rated G movie, which is kind of surprising.
Because what's the worst thing that
I
happens?
know, exactly, yeah.
I guess G is, sure. Nixon liked it, hell.
Yeah,
G.
yeah. Bring your kids and Nixon. Yeah.
Yeah, why not? The violence is slapstick. You can't
Yeah,
take
yeah.
it serious. No one's getting
Yeah.
carted off to the hospital with broken anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all kind of funny. I don't know.
People work.
Yeah.
I like this. Probably was working for like kids would love this. Actually, you know.
Yeah, he just never gets old. I mean, we mentioned Looney Tunes, and he just comes out and does it. Isn't that great when she just grabs that carrot? The first thing, you're off to the races when they're. Do you guys know the origin of "What's Up, Doc"? The term. Have you ever heard it? It's really close to home. Well, yeah, that's where it started. The Clark Gable grabs a carrot. So Tex Avery,
From
Chuck
Texas.
Jones,
Yeah.
Frank Tashlin,
Yeah.
who, we're talking the 40s, 50s at Warner Brothers, Looney Tunes. And Looney Tunes is they're so much cooler than Disney, right? The characters. We all agree on that? The characters are so much, the Disney, the cut. I don't know. I don't.
Anybody not agree?
Just, yeah. There's the door. Give me Daffy Duck any day. And anyway, so in that 1940, one of the early Bugs Bunny movies, he was supervising, because he didn't direct, he only directed a handful of those. I think it was more Chuck Jones. But Bugs Bunny takes a carrot, and he's like, well, what does he say? And he used the term, he grew up in Taylor, right up the highway, Taylor, Texas. And he said at his high school, that was just a thing they all said. Hey, what's up, Doc? What's up, Doc? So he just said, he threw it in there. What's up, Doc? Not really knowing. And they had a screening, and the whole audience just went crazy. It was such a big thing. It was like, oh my God, it was the funniest thing they'd ever seen. This guy chewing on a carrot going, oh, what's up, Doc? They just thought that was, so they had to put it in it became the running Bugs Bunny thing. But it was kind of random. It was just a thing that was at his high school here in Texas. So anyway.
That's amazing.
Tex Avery. That's the story.
Yeah, it's a Texas connection, of course.
Texas connection to
All
everything, right?
I see a hand in the front row right over here.
Watching it for the first time, you bring the sensibility of watching it as a modern, and so the whole thing with like the MacGuffins and the shell game. Have you ever actually tracked that all the suitcases are going where they're supposed to be going?
I don't know. Has anyone ever, how sometimes in movies, the DVD era, the video era, like people could go, wait a second, I've seen this now. I can slow it down and, I don't know if we got to go online and see if anyone's ever
Who gives a shit?
tracked. Yeah, that's not even, I remember, films give you that, in Goodfellas, the famous tracking shot, and they go, he goes after all that, they go out the door they came in, but who cares, right?
Yeah, who cares?
You're
watching movies wrong. I'm sorry.
Film is a magic trick. Everything's a conjured, they're trying to put a spell on you. They're faking it. It's all a gag, it's all artifice.
Yeah, you just made up. They're not just making up those lines. It's made up,
Yeah.
Okay.
Even in my intro, I was trying to, I took one toe into describing the plot of this movie. I said something about, I said, oh, screw it. In my head, I just went, why even bother? It's not about that. these plaid travel cases and all this stuff. I don't know. It is pretty funny, but I don't know. They all sell it,
Definitely, without a doubt. Let's see. I see a hand in the back going crazy.
Yes, sir. This is just a comment. I just want to acknowledge how much better comedies were before, like, safety standards. Sending cars off of,
Yeah, you see cars zipping by people who just jump out of the way. I'm like, ooh, can you do that now? I don't know.
Raising a glass to putting people in danger in cinema. That was the comment.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. Get those like safety monitors off the set. There is like one really notable
I
thing.
can tell you're a filmmaker, but be careful. That's all I can say.
So this was like a big.
I'm with you.
There's a big chase. Obviously, we're talking about the chase. There's a part where they go down the steps, and that's a park in San Francisco.
Right.
They messed those steps up, and they're still messed up to this day.
Right, and they were unauthorized. That's the legend, right?
It was unauthorized.
They didn't. How do you not get a permit to go down?
How do you go
those
shoot that without authorization?
It's probably 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning, and they just said, "Oh, screw it, put the camera down. Let's go down there and let's just."
It makes you wonder what else was unauthorized that they shot. Like,
I don't know. You'd think a studio film, they kind of have to be sort of buttoned up with these things.
I
But-
know that blew
But
my
every
mind.
film, no matter what, you still feel like you're seat of the pants, just stealing it, But
Yeah.
So if you go to those steps today, the chips and the
Yep.
where the muffler scraped it, and there's probably not been a lot of cars on those steps. Over
Probably
the
not.
years.
Yeah. I hope there's a plaque. I don't know.
There should be a
like,
plaque.
There really should be. Yeah.
Yeah,
Peter Bogdanovich ruined these steps.
These steps, and there should be a lot of plaques. But like the great San Francisco movies, I think people, there's Vertigo, obviously. What other great San Francisco? Bullet and Vertigo tend to be the champs. But this, come on. Oh, Basic.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
I see a hand right over here.
So along the same lines, talking about how Bogdanovich directed and produced, would he ever, when you used to talk to him, would he ever talk about the difficulty of having these giant set pieces with all these people and trying to direct it for comedic timing, specifically with the car chase, where you have 1,000 extras and the dragon and all sorts of money, and no one can die?
Yeah, and you can't kill people. And no, he never, even the way he talked about his own, and not like, I don't know if I ever asked him too much like that, but even if you listen to podcasts, he's not, a lot of filmmakers, you're kind of embattled and you tell war stories. He wasn't like that. I don't think things stressed him in the same way. I mean, it must be. You look at it and you see the effort. It's like, oh my God, just like, how do you do that? But he didn't speak of it like that. And to my recollection, I don't remember him going, oh my God, that scene was crazy. Like most people. He didn't really, I don't know. I think it all just kind of came natural to him. And I don't know if it was just the way he wanted to come off or he really was, but he never felt like I don't know.
He told a lot of stories that other people told him. He would repeat stories that like Stan Laurel told him or whatever.
Yeah, he was full of those stories. He really loved those. And he did great impressions of everybody.
Yep, yeah.
He's one of the great impressionists. But no, I don't really remember like a lot of that. But I didn't really, I'm not going to say I was like great friends. Just it was one of these periodic over the years, but always wonderful to see him and always talking pretty quickly about older films.
Yeah.
You'd mentioned something new. He's like, oh yeah, that's quite good.
Also, are we not going to talk about how incredible this guy's voice was who just asked this question? Are we just going to gloss over that? Can I hire you to narrate my life, please?
Temple, you got a job.
Yeah.
Temple Baker. You recognize that voice? I do.
Let's get a couple more questions and then we'll wrap it up for the night because we got to come back next week. I see a lot of hands, but I'm going to go to the back because we always ignore the back people.
No, it wasn't that. That was, like everybody, he had some unrealized projects. Obviously, everybody does. But the one he was trying to do now was, do you remember the name of it?
I don't remember if
it
he even
wasn't,
says the
but
name
it
of
wasn't
it.
that one, I don't think. It was.
He goes through the story and he's like, there's a rock star and all this stuff that sounded a little bit kind of, I mean, I assume that's the one he was talking to Jack Black about. Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
But listen to that podcast, and he talks all about it. Actually, just listen to it because it's him telling stories, doing Jerry Lewis impersonations, all this stuff that he was so good at.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see a hand right over here. Yeah.
What really hit me about the movie was the writing, the funny dialogue, the jokes that Buck Henry did. How much input did Peter have into that? Did he change the script much, do you know? Or was it pretty much true to the...
I don't know. Well, it was Newman and Robert Benton, the same guys who wrote Bonnie and Clyde. I think Peter would have liked to have written it, but he was busy like finishing this film and he kind of oversaw it. He gets a story by. So I think it was some unique collaboration between those four people and undoubtedly Polly Platt and, others, just kind of, oh, we're making that film. What about that scene? I had the feeling it was a bit of a group effort. And I think, I could be wrong, but I think Buck Henry came in and did a punch up, put your Buck Henry, he's separate from the other guys probably got the architecture right and the story, and Buck Henry probably came in with those just witty liner, those funny lines. But Peter
was he a stick to the script kind of director? Do you know?
I'm not sure. I don't. No, I don't think so. I think it was like if you come up with something pretty light on its feet there. But yeah, I'm not really that. You know how they're doing a lot of books about movies now. You know, just like a whole book about Chinatown, a whole book about, you know, this would be a fun one to do. So many interesting people, and its background must have been, you know, how it came to be, and the script and the casting. I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of people
would be
still
good.
alive too.
Yeah,
You got
still
the two
still
principals
plenty
still
of
alive.
people.
All right, let's get maybe one more question from the audience, and then we'll wrap it up. And we'll all go have a drink together.
Champagne.
All right over here.
You mentioned earlier that you remember seeing it in theaters. I was wondering, do you remember what your impression was of it, and do you consider him to be a big influence on your own filmmaking?
That's why I just saw it. I was a kid, you know. I mean, like I said, I saw Love Story. You saw all the movies, but yeah, in a theater, just laughing just constantly. If you're 11 or 12 or whatever, no, it was so joyous, you know. I just never seen anything quite like it. But as far as influence, I don't know. You can't really, you know. You should hope to.
Is
be
there anybody
influenced
out
by-
there that you look at and you're like, oh, that's Bogdanovich. I see that in this person's work.
Oh, I don't know. I think Edgar Wright. Yeah, that's a good shot. But you know, cinema
That's a good
loving
shot, too.
history. You know, I don't know. You know, that's just weird because I think Peter was so upfront about his own influences that you don't. You, as someone who's influenced on, clearly he influences a generation of filmmakers. Every filmmaker saw, you know, his films, but I think it's hard. You like the spirit of them, but I don't know if people. I mean, they aim for it. Oh, we'd love to do a film like What's Up, Doc, or Last Picture Show, or let's try to capture that. But since those films are trying to capture, you know, other eras too, maybe it's not as a direct link. That you know, you come out of it as successful, and as much as I think he has his own signature, maybe it doesn't go down in history as that Bogdanovich touch, you know.
It's been interesting to see, because I feel like in the past few years, when you hear from filmmakers when they talk about their influences, they're as likely to say that St. Jack was an influence as they are to say that Last Picture Show was an influence. They're as likely to say Mask was an influence. Like, these are later Bogdanovich films, you know. So
it's the whole body of work to me is really, really fascinating, and I say, you know, just amazingly consistent. This narrative that he peaked early and just fell apart. You know, but I remember hearing that, and that's why I kind of felt bad about Long Last Love having not seen it. I was like, oh yeah, you know, you kind of projected on this up and downness, which now I just think, oh no, it's here. You know, it's really in this range. It's not that.
Next week, we're going to have a chance to really talk about Bogdanovich's transit through celebrity and his perceived sort of arrogance as a celebrity, which I think a lot of people picked up on. His ascots, etc.
Yeah, he wasn't, again, kind of a guy out of town, out of time, and he wasn't really in with the film brat crowd, you know, even though he's basically their age. He's the same age as Francis Coppola and Friedkin and all those guys. He wasn't really hanging with them.
It's true,
He wasn't, you know, doing his own. He wasn't Scorsese in those guys.
Yeah.
He wasn't. His friends, his contemporaries, he just felt closer to the old guys. He knew. In the older Hollywood, he was never. I don't know if it's aloof, alienated. I don't know what the right word is. I don't really qualify to say, but he wasn't, you know, even to this day. Oh, Lucas, Spielberg, De Palma, they'll list those, and they won't list Bogdanovich. But he's of that exact same era, because he was just different.
In a weird way, like a good parallel might be Wes Anderson. You know, because Wes Anderson does not seem like a guy who's like hanging out, throwing the volleyball around with, you know,
he's wearing the ascot though.
Yeah, the ascot. Yeah. That's kind of like the Bogdanovich, you know. Wes Anderson's living in like a train car in Paris or whatever.
Yeah, you know? But no one hates Wes, you know, as far that I know of.
I don't either.
You know, he's not dating. You know, again, there'll never be another cultural kind of moment. I remember when Quentin started like hosting Saturday Night Live and stuff like that. I was like, of my generation, I was like, Quentin, you're into some pretty new territory here for a director. I can't imagine. But no, he handled it really well, I think.
We had
talk
lessons.
about directors in the culture. He
Everybody could see Bogdanovich's transit, and they could kind of like plan around it,
Yeah, you learn a lot from your elders,
Yeah, yeah.
and for better or worse,
And
Inspired.
you people just learned a lot from your probably elders. So
Definitely elder. But okay, so everybody coming to At Long Last Love next week. Cole Porter, Peter Bogdanovich, Madeline Kahn's back. It's sublime.
Duilio
It's-
de Prete.
It's so yeah. It's so you won't be disappointed. We will just go back in time, break out the champagne, and 30s escape the depression and just watch this movie. And not that anyone gave a shit about any of that in 1975 or '6, but that'll be the point. It's a movie just completely suspended in time, that nothing should never have come out at that time. At the time it did. I love movies like that. They're just wow, just.
We are fixing to rehabilitate some Bogdanoviches.
Yeah, I think it's
All right.
time.
Are
It's
you guys,
time.
Are you guys in it to win it?
And it to
All
win
right.
it. And it's Burt Reynolds. The great Burt Reynolds. And people groan when they say, but Burt can sing, I promise you. And he's the biggest star in the world at this time. And he's fantastic. It's like Burt, I don't know. I just think it's a gem. Madeline Kahn, Sybil Shepherd, Burt Reynolds, and it's just got a great vibe.
I think we got
It's
him.
like-
I think we
yeah.
got him, Rick. I think we
Yeah.
did it.
Okay.
All right. I want to thank you
Don't
so
groan.
much, Richard
Come on.
Linklater,
I promise
for
you.
joining
I
us.
promise you.
Thank you, Peter Bogdanovich.
Thanks, guys.
Madeline
This was
Kahn,
fun.
Polly Platt.
Yes. All the greats gone.
And thanks
Madeline
all of you.
Kahn left us way too soon.